Okay, today's December 6th. I want to call to order. This is a meeting of the Podiatric Medical Board of California, and I'd like to call to order and establish a quorum. Dr. Manzi. Present. Ms. Cadenas.
Present.
Dr. Mansdorf.
Present.
Dr. McAloon.
Present.
Present.
Okay, great. I'd like to welcome everyone, and at this time, if there's any public comments on items not on the agenda, I would like someone to let us know. All right. The board may not discuss or take action on any matter raised during the public comment section, except to decide whether to place the matter on the agenda for future meetings. So I'd like to move on and review and approve the June 7th, 2019 board meeting minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have
Second.
Okay. So should we take a vote?
Okay, so just one sec here.
Oh, sure.
So just for the record, so the motion is Dr. Mansdorf, and the second is Ms. Cadenas.
Approve, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, they're the September minutes, correct?
Oh,
Yes.
yes, it's a September 13th board meeting.
And also ask for public comments before voting.
I did. Yeah, it is a typo. It's reversed. That's okay. All right. Are there any public comments?
Correct the typo. Dr. Manzi,
Yes.
Ms. Cadenas,
Aye.
Dr. Mansdorf,
Aye.
Dr. McAloon,
Aye.
Dr. Zach.
Aye.
Great. Okay. Okay, we're gonna get a. First, we're gonna hear from the licensing program.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So first we'll start with the new licenses issued and renewals during the first quarter of fiscal year 1920 between July 1st and September 30th. In July, there were 19 permanent licenses issued. In August, there were 4, and in September, there were 6, for a total of 29 newly licensed DPMs for quarter one. There's currently 22 pending applications with 2 candidates that recently completed their application packages. And so far, for the fiscal year 1920, PMBC had 6 of the applicants come from out of state, 13 were third-year residents from California, and 10 were third-year residents from an out-of-state program. For the renewals, in July, 113 renewals were mailed, with 104 renewals by end of month. August had 112 renewals mailed, with 110 renewed by end of month. And September had 100 renewals mailed, with 92 licenses renewed by end of month. Delinquent notices were mailed to those that did not comply 30 days after expiration. Next, for the residents, the resident academic year started on July 1st of 2019 and will end on June 30th of 2020. PMBC currently has 43 first-year residents, 39 second-year residents, and 41 third-year residents. There was 1 resident added to the third-year rotation list, bringing the resident license total count to 124. And then now we have the Podiatric Medical Fellowships that Dr. Manzi wanted to discuss.
So, Dr. Manzi, that's your discussion from the national level?
Right.
Okay.
So just to it's more of an informative thing since we are the state board. As we know, there's the Council of Podiatric Medical Education has a list of what they consider approved fellowships, and that's in attachment D. And if you want to just look at that really quickly. So these are the list of approved fellowships, and as you can see, there are a few in California. There is no official match that goes on with these fellowships. The way this works is that the third-year resident would look over the fellowship list and decide whether or not to apply, and then contact the program director. And sometimes they hear back from them, sometimes they don't. If they're given a interview, they go and maybe visit and whatever, and then it's very informal. They're either offered the fellowship or not. The reason I brought this discussion up is that because there are some in California, I think we should be aware of them. I tried to look more into this in more depth to see what exactly does this approval mean, and all it means is that these are the ones that have been presented to the Council for the Council for Podiatric Medical Education, and basically approved. However, there are other fellowships out there that are more, I guess, informal. But what it really comes down to is like we don't really have any kind of, I guess, oversight to them, except for whatever the Council of Podiatric Medical Education deems their oversight is. And that once again, there are fellowships out there, and some of them do exist in California, that aren't necessarily on this list. And in general medicine, it's kind of like this, except they have a match program, just like a residence match would happen. Whether podiatry is going to move into that or not, I do not know. But that's just some information I think we should be aware of. And the other thing I wanted to make you aware of was that the idea that in general medicine, for instance, you could go do a fellowship at the Mayo Clinic, and the overseer is the Mayo Clinic. So your certificate basically just says, I did a fellowship at the Mayo Clinic. So then that's recognized because of just the panache that the Mayo Clinic has. But it's not necessarily any different than like what we're doing. So in other words, you could get a large healthcare system, maybe UCS, I don't know, a large, even like a Sutter or someone can say, oh, we're going to do a podiatric fellowship, and your certificate comes from us. So it's just something I think we should be aware of, because I don't know if, people are going to advertise, the fact that, and I did a fellowship at, because they certainly can, just like where you did your residency. But it's just something I'm sure it's kind of new, and, this blossoming of fellowships, and I thought that we should be aware of it.
There is a surgery center near me that has a quote-unquote fellowship where they'll take a podiatrist who finished a residency and give them 1 year further training in general surgical techniques. Some of these fellows come from out of state. I guess we presume that the fellowship has confirmed they have a license, but they're unknown to us. So they're practicing as a fellow in California without our knowledge.
Right. So, that brings up a good point. What I don't know how to capture the fellowships that exist. I don't know how to capture it. I think the surgery center would have to do a credentialing on this person.
They would have to have a permanent license
Yeah,
to be in the
I would
fellowship.
think so.
They would be licensed in California.
Are you aware of anybody applying to these fellowships that maybe aren't on this list?
I don't usually get.
You would not know that.
Yeah, no, they're just applying for the permanent license, and where they go after that,
Right.
we don't track.
Right. And you could be in the position where the person already has a permanent California license and they're doing a fellowship somewhere that's not necessarily on this list. And I don't know if it's really important that we know that, except maybe it is. I don't really know. So I'm just trying to bring this all.
So basically, there could be
Alike.
somebody in this fellowship that, let's say, comes from Maine,
Okay.
and they accept this fellowship. They fly on over, what do you say, Mike? It was a year? And they do the fellowship for a year, and they get their certificate, and they fly back to Maine. We have no idea that they're a California licensed, permanent licensed.
We have no idea if they have, if they're licensed anywhere, really.
Okay.
Yeah. However, I think for them to actually operate in an operating room of a surgery center, I don't think anyone's going to let. I mean, just knowing what I know about the surgery center business, I'm not sure the surgery center, unless you had one in your office.
Well, then why do we license anybody if their hospital's going to assure that they're licensed?
Well, you have to go through credentialing when you apply to go operate in an operating room, right?
You're making an assumption. Other practitioners could bring somebody in to work for a year in their office, call it a fellowship. We would never know. I think that we should.
How do we capture
But
it?
they should have applied for a license before they
But
went
I'm hearing,
into the fellowship.
I mean, could we put some pressure on CPME or California Podiatric CPMA to California Podiatric Medical Association, not CPME, CPMA,
CPMA.
to say, listen, if you want to have a fellowship in California, we'd like to know about it.
Ms. Cadenas.
Perhaps
I
we could.
guess I'm hearing two different things. One is, how do we ensure that the person's practicing podiatry, even in a fellowship, are actually licensed and that we can track that? And the other one is, what are the requirements of these fellowships to ensure that they're actually have the standards that even the Council on Podiatric Medical Education is providing, and how does that impact their possible promotion or credentials?
Right.
And how does that impact the consumer? Because that would be my concern, right?
Okay, so that's exactly my concern. So that was my whole point about this list that exists from the Council of Podiatric Medical Education. There is a legit list, and they have all these requirements that you have to go through to have a fellowship that is approved by the Council of Podiatric Medical Education. My point is I believe there's fellowships out there that aren't approved by the Council of Podiatric Medical Education. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but because some of them could be a sports medicine. I do a lot of sports medicine, and I need a helper. So I say, I'll give the guy a fellowship. I'll pay them a stipend, and they'll come work with me, and I'll teach them something about sports medicine. And then at the end of it, I'll say, you successfully completed my fellowship in sports medicine. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuff, I think, does exist. My question is this: do we need to know about it? Yeah, what do you think?
I'll comment. So I do agree with the concept that this board should be aware of the fellowships in California that are granting fellowship certification. I think the licensing board should be knowledgeable about who those entities are. So I agree with that point. I know that people advertise, even in their email, will say fellowship trained or something of the sort. So I know then when people get that extra work, you want to use that. You want to use it. You spend a year with this extra training, and you want to use it to promote your skills and abilities. So no doubt it has value. That's why people do it and they use it. So it is a valuable thing to have. My understanding of some of the fellowships in California are sort of are not using CPME but ACFAS, if my understanding is correct. I'm not an expert on fellowships, but I believe there's different.
You're right about
different,
that.
So that they said they're ACFAS certified, not CPME. Mm-hmm. So and I don't know what their standards are for fellowships. It's not something I've looked into to know what their standards are. So there's that piece. But I do agree with the concern of someone coming in for a year, doing a fellowship and leaving, and we never know that they were here and did or did they not have a license. I'm reluctant to make that presumption that you made about, well, they must be if they're doing the surgery. I would say, well, that I'm not comfortable making that presumption. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That may be true, but I'm not comfortable making that presumption that it's true. So I do think that we should be aware of the fellowships and aware of the licensing status of the people doing that fellowship. And I do think that that's a Podiatric Medical Board issue rather than CPMA issue, because CPMA doesn't really get engaged in education, residencies, fellowships. It's a professional, more political organization. So I don't really, my opinion is that's not on them to manage fellowships and keep track of residencies. I don't think that's their purview or their wheelhouse.
It's probably ours.
I agree that it would be this board's, if it was our concern and our issue, I think that would be on us, not on them, to see who they are and see if those people are licensed, if that is a concern that we have. And I think the fact that we're talking about it now kind of obligates us.
Okay,
to
so
do it.
that's my intro.
Yeah.
So I think the board needs to evaluate the framework of this. I know the workload is going to be above and beyond our license coordinator to stack somebody with additional tasks because they're already at the max. So we need to put a framework together, possibly run a BCP and ask for another position to assist in this. Just so we can keep with the flow and efficiency of our current licensees.
And this would also apply to positions sometimes called preceptorships, where somebody's coming in and working with a doctor for a period of time and learning from them. If they're actually treating patients, they should be licensed. And I don't know how we capture this information, but I think that we should at least promulgate the fact that anybody who practices medicine as a preceptor or a fellow needs to be licensed.
Which they usually
We probably
are.
have to look at some regulations or statute as well to give us the guidance for that, because we have no authority at this point.
Right. Right now, you guys can only look at residency programs. So if you wanted to expand that to fellowships, that would be a statutory change.
Don't we have jurisdiction of practicing podiatry without a license?
Absolutely, yes.
So then we do have.
Yeah. So, but I mean, if you're going to look at if you want to obtain authority to
think it would
approve
be-
fellowship programs and really kind of get involved in that venue and that kind of arena,
Scope,
like
right?
residency programs, then
I think all we care about is practicing podiatry without a license.
Yeah.
right, and that's absolutely within your purview. Yes.
I would agree. I don't think that we're looking to have this board oversee or manage fellowship programs. I think that's out of scope. But in terms of ensuring that those practicing podiatry are licensed and there's some oversight of understanding so that it doesn't impact consumers, that I think that's within their scope and our interest. And at minimum to have a listing of what those fellowships are, not necessarily to oversee them or manage them.
That's actually all I was wanting was a list of really who has a fellowship. If you're not on this list or you're not on that other list, is there a fellowship out there? I just think as a licensing board, I would like to know that. And the other thing is by the way, I looked into I asked the question to the Federation of Podiatric Medical Boards and asked them, what do you know about fellowships? And they said, this is all we know about fellowships. And it didn't mention the ones by the American College of Foot and Ankle Surgeons. The ones that they mentioned were the ones I put in this thing. So my point being that I'm not sure there's a governing body out there yet in the whole field that is actually doing anything yet about these fellowships, which is interesting because there is no matching like there is in general medicine. But the second thing about this is I think this is the tip of the iceberg because I think you're going to see more and more of these fellowships arise. And I do think that's a truthful statement.
I had a question about Michael's comment about preceptors. Are preceptorships allowed in California?
No, I don't think so.
Not per se, but I mean, I can see somebody saying, my uncle's practices in California, I'm going to work with him for a while and learn what he's, I wasn't trained in wound care or something.
But you would be licensed in order to do that.
I'm just saying he should or she should be licensed to do that. But we don't know if there's any of these happening that we don't know about.
About someone coming in to work with anybody from
Right.
another state.
Right.
And by the way, for your knowledge, there's 6 in California that are ACFAS. No, 7, excuse me, in California.
Might I suggest we bring this back to the subcommittee and figure out what it is we want to look at? Because right now it's not within our bailiwick to investigate fellowships.
Okay.
We don't control the education. Practicing without a license is a totally different ball of wax, and that's certainly within our purview.
Okay.
But to investigate that would take a lot of time from staff
Right.
and also cost.
No, that's fine. I just want you to know what we're doing in the committee because that's what, a question was asked of me, didn't know how to answer it. And not sure if you do know of other, if there is, like In other words, it's all about certification. And right now, the only one that is listed by, by the Federation, which is of all the medical boards, is if it's ACFS.
Maybe as a minimum, we could put in the newsletter that if anybody is practicing as a preceptor or in a fellowship or in any capacity treating patients, they need to be licensed. And then for now, we'll just see if anybody reports any situations where that's not happening. But people need to know that you have to have a license to do a fellowship or to train with Uncle Bob.
Yeah, the reason that I bring this up is that I do know of local fellowships that listen, our third-year resident in California has a license. So those are the guys going out for these fellowships. But I do know of some fellowships that bring candidates from the outside of California. I'm sure they applied here for licensing. So I'm just saying that, the ones that we know of, that's the protocol.
Yeah, I echo the interest of sending it back to committee for some more concrete delivery. But I do think there's two requests that I'm hearing. One is, let's see if we can come up with a list of fellowships that are currently there, just in general, without knowing that. And then the other one is ensuring that the consumer, or at least those in practice, understand that if they're going to be practicing medicine, whether it's a fellowship or otherwise, they need to be licensed to do so, right? And I think it's also for those offering fellowship programs to know that they need to have that requirement. At a minimum, that's what I'm hearing, and maybe at the committee we can discuss how and if is feasible based on capacity. I'm also very conscious that we have limited staff capacity, and also we just went through an entire sunset review and looking at our financials. So the idea of adding another position for this is not going to happen. So
exactly. Yeah. Okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll take it back to committee. I'll let you know if there's anything more that.
Thanks. But in that note, and to tag on what Maria says, maybe in our newsletter, we could simply put a statement mentioning that practicing the state of California requires a license, such as if you're in a fellowship, or some kind of paragraph just to put that out there to read. So maybe in our newsletter, some kind of paragraph or statement about that if you must be licensed. If you perform,
We'll make it in red with a big warning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then because right now there could be plausible ignorance, or and so if we put in our newsletter, it's something to refer to, at least to put a minimum of what we're talking about today out there.
You know that I have to say this. Plausible ignorance is not a defense.
No, I know that's
FYI.
Yes.
And I just wanted to mention, it was my understanding that this fellowship training is just an additional, extra training and education after you finish residency. And so I guess my question is, what's the difference between getting board certified
there is a big difference.
And getting an extra training certificate?
Because a lot of places now will actually advertise, especially with the large HMOs in California, that they're looking for this position open and they would like fellowship training. So it is actually now yet another, not barrier to employment, but the point being that if you've done 3 years of residency and not a fellowship, and someone else has done the fellowship, that's who they're looking for. So it is. I'm telling you, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Just
but they would have to be licensed.
And for your education, so board certification is more general.
Yes,
that's for every podiatric physician and surgeon to become board certified. A fellowship is going to be more in a specific area, perhaps sports medicine or wound care or reconstructive surgery. It's going to be a more narrow area of expertise, where board certification is going to be a more general practice, not in a niche.
And some of these,
not a subspecialty.
And some of these fellowships hone in on one thing over another. And so if they know you've done a fellowship at, say, this particular one, then they know you maybe have had more experience with putting large frames on and dealing with this type of complex surgery, or you've done all the sports medicine. It just depends on what fellowship you're coming from. But the problem with podiatry is, especially in California, the mind goes more along the lines of additional surgical training. It just does. I mean, that's the way it's going. But not that that's the way it should go, but that's the way it seems to be going, especially in this day and age. So I think that it brings up a whole nother. And by the way, for board certification, you have up to 10 years that you've been out of practice. Out of your your residency training, or out of school, I guess, to actually apply for board certification, to sit for board certification. After that, you can't get board certified by the two that are recognized by California Podiatric Medical Association, CPMA. Did you know that?
I know there's only 2 that are recognized.
Yeah, right. And we approved 3 to advertise that you're board certified or trained or whatever. All right. Anyways. Okay. Any more discussion on that? Okay.
I have one more comment.
Yes.
For the list of
Yes.
fellowships, the one that was included was from CPME. How else?
Would you get them?
Right. Like, how would we
So
know
is
every single fellowship in
that-
California? Do I just
well,
Google.
Well, that's my question.
Yeah.
And
okay.
so I will take that back to, for all I know, they don't exist, but I do know they do. So I don't know how to capture them.
Could we just not make a request in the newsletter and say if you are hosting a fellowship program in podiatry, we would like to learn about it?
Yeah, that'd be great. Could
Not
we
that
do
they will come up, but I mean, I don't think
Not a bad idea.
We
Put
don't
it out
need
there.
something really heavy. It would be
No,
just light.
That would be a very good idea.
Do we have the ACFAS list?
Yes, it's right here.
Can we include that in our packet?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, because we only have the CPMA list in
and
our
s-
packet, correct?
yes.
Okay.
I think the podiatry colleges may be a good resource as to fellowship availability.
The residents are a good resource.
Yeah.
And the
They
American
know.
Academy of Podiatric Sports Medicine has fellowships too.
Right. There's a plethora of them out there, but my point is there's not one big list, and there's not one organization that actually has them in an umbrella and has them all listed. There is no clearinghouse for this. And they might be all tremendous. I'm sure people are putting a lot of energy into these things, but as a board that licenses people, I think I would like to know which ones exist in the state of California. We're always ahead of the curve in California. Why wouldn't we want to know? Okay.
Okay, so I think it's thrown back to the committee to frame something up and.
Okay. You have any other? We'll go to the calendar.
The calendar.
Yeah.
is left. Yes.
So,
That was-
our next meetings are January. Let's see, okay, so January and February 4th, the license renewals will be mailed out. All right. And that's in February.
Yeah.
And then in December, our board meeting is today, but in January, renewals mailed out, and then our next group of committee meetings will be about February 12th.
Somewhere in there, and I have the new 2020 calendar. I'll email it to you guys.
Okay. But that's.
And that will be
about what we're
posted on the
looking at,
website
February
too.
12th. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's move on to enforcement.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The report covers fiscal year 1920 quarter one, which is July through September. I'm going to start with the statistics for this quarter. First, the complaint data. First quarter complaint data, we received 40 complaints, which is a 17% decrease over the same quarter of last year. We are up for the number of days for completing intake. We're up to 13 days, which is over the 10 days target. Medical board has been short-staffed, so they are behind on doing the intake, but they put some measures in place to try and catch up. So hopefully next quarter we'll see an improvement. For investigation data this says fourth quarter, it should be first quarter. 45 desk investigations were assigned, which is a 21% decrease over the first quarter of last year. And we're looking good on our timeframes. We've got an increase for the desk investigation processing, but if you look at it overall, we're at 100 days, which is looking really good. We had 6 investigations assigned to the field, which is down from the first quarter of last year as well. And we completed 8 investigations, which is 33% increase over 1 year ago. But our investigation times are looking good compared to last quarter. Moving on to our disciplinary data, 2 disciplinary cases were initiated at the AG's office. Last year, there was only 1 case initiated during the first quarter. 1 final order went into effect compared to 0 first quarter of last year. 1 citation was issued this quarter, same as first quarter of last year. No new probationers were added during the first quarter. However, we've had an increase in public letter of reprimands with conditions, and we had 1 of those that went into effect. And at the end of the quarter, there were 8 active probationers and 3 individuals with public letters of reprimands with conditions attached. So the total for quarters 1 through 4, we only have first quarter data at this time. So we've got a little bit of an increase of complaint intake time. We are looking good at our average time to complete investigations so far this year. We had just 1 final order issued so far, 1 citation, and that's our totals for first quarter. For cases with the Attorney General's office, 2 new cases were forwarded during the first quarter, and 1 final order went into effect, where there are currently 17 cases pending with the AG as of October 22nd. 1 of those cases is undergoing the appeal process. This is a high number of cases with the AG. We're still waiting for a lot of cases to close that have been over there for a long time. Those are starting to see some movement, however. Just some legal delays. Moving forward to our performance measure data, we now have 18-19 data posted online, and that is also included in attachment F. That concludes the statistics. Are there any questions on enforcement statistics at this time? Good, no questions. Okay. For the probation program update, we collected $11,768, which is close to the average over the past 5 years. So we're looking pretty reasonable there. And moving forward to the consultant expert program, we do have 2 consultants that will be terming out soon in March of 2020. It would be ideal to replace our consultants as they exit the program for their 2-year break. So if anybody has, through word of mouth, usually has been the best way to obtain consultants and experts for the program. And we put the announcement in the newsletter as well and on our webpage. But again, it helps us complete the complaints on time if we have a full roster. So if you know of anyone that might be good for that role, just let them know to apply to us. And we do have 1 application for consultant for the board to review and vote on. That is attachment G, has the CV for Dr. Robert Anavian.
I'll make a motion to approve Dr. Anavian as a consultant to the Board of Podiatric Medical Board of California. I don't know him personally, but he does meet all the criteria, and I appreciate anybody willing to take the time and effort to support the profession as well as protect the public.
I know Dr. Navian, and I will second that.
Public comment?
All right. So
And then a roll.
Well, I just
Okay, discussion?
discussion. I mean, I'm sure it's fine, but so the boards. Do we have board certification requirements for them? Yes. Okay. And so once again, his board certification is from the American Board of Podiatric Orthopedics and Primary. Which one is that one?
So unfortunately, I mean, they changed their name. He hadn't updated his
Right,
CV
on the
from then.
website.
Is podiatric medicine, yeah.
So that's the Board of Wait, I have ABPS. No,
ABPM.
ABPM. Right. And then the other one is that board that we talked about earlier, the board in podiatric orthopedics.
So that's the one
this
that
is the
become
same
ABPM.
board? Okay. Okay. So I have for a second on the motion. We'll take a vote.
As a comment, I realize he's not board certified in the American Board of Podiatric Surgery,
Right.
but he's a pretty accomplished surgeon, and I've watched him do clubfoot repairs in Honduras
Mm-hmm.
on multiple occasions, and even in Mexicali. He's a pretty talented surgeon.
He comes recommended by our top consultant, so I trust his opinion.
Okay. Great. So we have a second. Do we have any more discussion? Okay. Do you want to take a vote?
Dr. Manzi?
Aye.
Mr. Venus?
Aye.
Dr. Manstor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Given that information, fortunately, there's been a recommendation and we have direct observation input, which has helped us. But is a cover letter not helpful in these situations with perhaps, Dr. Zapf, if someone wasn't here to share what you shared with us, we would not have that information. Would a cover letter with these applications not be helpful to us to address that? If someone didn't have one here, someone here to tell us that?
Well, we heard that one of our experts, who actually was one of his directors in the residency program, has recommended him. So not only either a cover letter or a written recommendation from someone we trust would be
So on
helpful.
the application, there is a field for 3 references, and that's where I checked, and one of his references was one of our top consultants. So.
Okay, great.
I would find that information very helpful to have.
Our packet.
But that was a phone call. There probably should be some documentation of your phone call where he would explain why he's a good candidate.
I think for the board to review the application, it would be helpful, even if the candidate provides them themselves. I know it's asking the staff to make sure that you collect it and put it in the board packet, but it would be helpful. I think the other piece that was valuable to me is knowing that the staff does deep review to make sure that they're meeting the standards that we require for consultants. So I think that is always something that we appreciate. But having either a cover letter or a letter of reference in not only their CV would be helpful in our review.
Okay.
Perhaps
Okay.
the next committee meeting.
Well
we
noted.
can put together
Yeah,
a
we'll bring it to the
process.
committee and frame that one as well.
Okay.
Great.
It would put us on a spot to have to reject a candidate if we didn't have the documentation that we would have accepted.
There is some additional documentation I usually provide to committee, but because this is public, I don't usually provide the application itself with all of the confidential information, which is why I've been providing the CV. But we can change the process.
Yeah, you can provide. Sorry, Ileana. You can provide the information to the board members and not make it public, or just redact all the information. But I can work with you on that.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay. So thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move on now to the most exciting part of the day, the legislative program. Kathleen.
Excitement.
Yeah, here it comes.
Good morning, board members.
Wake up, everyone.
My name is Kathleen Cooper, and I'm about to present 2 program reports to you for the last board meeting of 2019. The first is the legislative report, which I'm sure you might already know, but at this time of year will be quite sparse. We expect the activity to flourish again at the beginning of the year. The second is the public education report, which mainly focuses on the outreach activity as outlined in the Sunset Review report and the newsletter. So let's begin with legislative. I would first like to introduce our new regulation attorney. His name is Clay Jackson. Could you stand, Mr. Jackson? He's been an attorney for 30 years in a variety of roles, including litigation and board counsel. And coincidentally, he has a son in the Podiatric School at Western. So, Clay, is there anything you'd like to tell us about your new position with our board?
Hello again. My name is Clay Jackson, and I don't know if you're aware, but the Legislative Affairs Division at Department of Consumer Affairs has started a regulation unit. They've hired 5 attorneys and a lead, and our job is just to work on regulations. And so it'll free Ileana from having to do a job that is very difficult, takes a lot of time, and so it'll allow us to be able to just work on the regulations of the various boards and commissions that we have at DCA, and my boards that I'm working on, many of them are medical, and I avoided the medical board and the dental board because I want to be able to focus on the boards and commissions that might not get as much attention were I to be on one of the full-time board, so to say. I'm very excited to work with this board because my son is a first year at Western, and I have one of my best friends is a podiatrist with Kaiser and Morse Avenue, and so my son shadowed him, and my son has been excited to be a podiatrist for pretty much his entire college career. This is what he's wanted to do, what you do. And so I share his zeal to work with you. So anyway, thank you. Thank you so
Clay.
much.
Thank you. So you can see we're in good hands. And we have disciplinary guidelines coming up next year, so he'll be well utilized. So as you can see by the Sunset Review report, there were 11 legislative matters in which PMBC was directly involved. And I only include them in this report to kind of give you all a pat on the back. I mean, that legislative activity since the last sunset is tremendous for a small board. And many of those bills were directly involved with the impetus here at Dr. Zapp, and others took a lot of initiative to get those things passed. If you want to talk about any of those, we could do it now or maybe during Brian's section of the sunset. The only current pending legislation is AB 407, which is the Santiago bill on fluoroscopy and radiography. But as we know that it's a 2-year bill, we don't know how it's going to have the same challenges it had toward the end of the first cycle, which I think there was some public health, the Department of Public Health, and excuse me if I've got that wrong, but I think it was falling on them, and they were a little bit worried about the burdens of changing this type of regulatory fluoroscopy certification. So that'll be the challenge for all the people involved in 407. But as to what other bills are expected next year, we don't know of any directly related to podiatry so far, except for that one. Any questions about legislative bills?
I have a question about 407. So besides the fact that the fluoroscopy piece, which is a big piece in my opinion, we're not the only ones interested in this. You know, I know that the general medical field is also very interested in this. Is there stuff attached to this bill that's really going to kill it? Like weird stuff?
It's not weird stuff. I think it's just getting state agencies to take on more work. Just like we said, looking at fellowships, someone's got to do it. So that's what I heard, but maybe we won't know until the meat of it.
But as far as like an ancillary thing, sometimes and then at the end of the bill, it's like world peace.
No.
I mean, it's
I know what you mean. Right.
Seriously.
That's the worst, but it didn't happen here that I know of.
Just curious. Thank you.
I do know that a lot of support was on the list of supporting groups and not so much on the opposed. But the opposed apparently went out for year one. We'll see what happens in year two.
I don't know if I'm with residents all the time, so I you have to hear all this chatter. And, not only on the DPM side, but on the MD side and the osteopathic side, they're all, the students particularly are really watching this bill because it's an expensive test. It's unnecessary what they put you through. And it's particularly for your use of fluoroscopy in the operating room, whatever. So,
Well, you have another year, so anything can happen. Okay, so any other legislative comments on the bills that were listed in the last 4 years? It's pretty straightforward. I think they were all successful, and now we are PMBC, a separate board from MBC. If no comments, I'll go to regulations. There's currently one pending regulation, and that's the one related to AB 2138. It's titled Reinstatement, Suspended or Revoked Certificates, Substantial Relationship Criteria. But it's the one that deals with the prior criminal convictions and the application for licensure. So we're one of the first boards, if not the first, to be reviewed at the Office of Administrative Law. Our hearing date is January 15th. I included the notice, what we call the eyesore, in the text so that you can see what's pending. We did all this at the March meeting, so I wouldn't, unless you just love to read, you did already approve this and decide what you wanted to put into the regs in March. So I'm just reporting it's going forward. It takes a long time, but it is going forward. As far as the rest of the listing for the regulations, I would like to congratulate you also because in the last sunset, I don't believe there was a single reg. And this time there's like 6 or 7, which for a board of our size is a pretty good cleanup effort. Some of them, most of them were what we call Section 100s, which were just changes without substantial effect. But still, it's a very active area. And it shows, I think, for the sunset reviewers that you're really taking things seriously. So the only other thing I have to say about Leg and Reg is we hope the next year is very busy and we stay up on things. If there's anything you'd like to talk about, you can always give me a call and we can find out if there's anything you'd like to bring forward, bring it to committee and see if there's, it's almost like we had this slew of legislation and now I don't think we're going to be involved in very much. So it might be a hiatus for a while. Comments or questions on the Leg and Reg report? I'd like to thank Ileana and her team for helping us a lot with that AB 2138.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have no team. Thanks for the recognition, I guess.
Yeah, she worked really hard. And like I say, we were one of the first. Okay, so I'll move on to the public education report. The newsletter for the spring and summer 2019 has been printed and distributed, and we would like to thank all contributors, especially you, Dr. Manzi. The next report will be going before the committee on February 12th. And if anybody would like to talk about what the newsletter, we use the newsletter in our strategic plan. We use the newsletter for many things that we just discussed. We can really make it better. So anybody has any comments or wants to see a regular column, Andre and I were talking about creating a crossword puzzle and, having different, how many CE credits do and things like that. So we need to know from when we get into committee again if anybody wants our newsletter to be a little fun. And then we can report back to you on March 6th. But let's just look a little bit at the sunset review part of the public education report. So in the section that they dealt with in the sunset, they wanted to know that we were posting, and we were posting everything they talked about. So we do have our minutes. We have the webcasting. Every single board meeting you've been involved with since the last sunset is available on YouTube. And we post our annual meeting calendars. We have had the camera on and all the web posting for every single meeting, every single board meeting. So we're in compliance with the things they brought up as far as outreach to the public for the activities of this board. I know we could do more, but right now we're just using the social media accounts. We're using our listserv, and we're using the website for all announcements. So I just want to say again and again, any thoughts you have even if they're small little ideas, you could just email me, and then I could put them into a list of things that could be covered in that newsletter. Other than that, I don't know what to say about the future in terms of topics. We have a lot of topics, but we don't have a lot of writing going on with, original writing. So that leaves me then to mostly pull articles from other, and that's okay if that's what we want our newsletter to be. But I strongly encourage anybody to follow up on ideas and thoughts that you have for that newsletter. It's hard to keep finding topics. If you know what I mean, if our board members can contribute, it would bring a lot of life to it. So, are there any comments about the sunset section or the footnote section? And I have included the last publication as an attachment to the public education program report.
I think the newsletter looks great. Thank you very much. It's an effort, I know.
You know, it's funny though. This newsletter, it seemed to be devoid of like big material. We included things that affect everybody, and I heard more about this one than about fungus.
Right.
Things that affect people. So who knows? Maybe we need to focus more, not so much on our licensee base, but the public and the licensee base for topics. Okay. So that went pretty fast. There was a lot there, but I guess you'll be going over more details when you get to the sunset section. Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so review of the responses to the sunset review, I guess, right? Yeah. Okay,
So basically, during committees, everybody had a chance to take a look at this, review this. It is in final print. So we have the fee study first. Is there any discussion about the fee study? We know that we're going to be asking for the temporary $200 to be permanent, the $214, an additional $214, and then for a new initial license is $47. I think everybody during all the different committees agreed on that. So we made that as part of our option that we put in the sunset. And I think that's very reasonable. It's not a drastic hit to get to that 12-month reserve. It's a nice, easy slope to it that we're just not gouging all the licensees quickly. So to say.
And thank you for the work that went into that. I think it's prudent and measured to get us to sustainability.
Right. When we came up with the idea of the $200 temporary, right, that just floated us by because we didn't have the time to do the fee study. So now we have the fee study done, and in conjunction with the sunset, now we know exactly where we need to be. And I think it just worked hand in hand that we had that temporary fee to get us by. Now we know exactly where we need to be. So thank you.
do we have more discussion about that fee increase fee study? Okay, so of course, I think this is a great idea. It's definitely needed. After having an ability to look at the medical boards across the country, although I know that's not necessarily our job, is to compare ourselves, but I do think that we have a more robust board, and because we have a lot of licensees. So I think it's very important that we remain this viable and this strong. And I do think that, the fee increase is really nominal, I think, for amount of work that is done here. So I think I need to call for a motion to accept and approve the fee study.
Correct.
So can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so we have Dr. Zapp moved and Ms. Cadena is second the motion, so let's take a vote.
Dr. Manzi.
Aye. Oh, excuse me, discussion or public comment? No? Okay. Aye.
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 Great. Thank you. Okay, now let's discuss the Sunset Review Report. You've all got it here, so hopefully you've read through it. Do we have any discussion about it? Or any comments? Yes. Do you have a comment?
Actually, I'd like to commend staff for putting together a fantastic report. Thanks for the amount of time that you put into it. Well done.
It's really well done.
And I echo that to the Andrea, Bethany, Kathy, and Michelle.
And being around for the last one, I don't know, maybe it's the politics or whatever, but this seemed to go a lot smoother than the last time around. So thank you.
And a lot shorter, too.
Oh, my God, yes.
We saved a tree or two.
Thank God. A 2 or 3, a forest, I think. So I do need a motion, though, to move forward with this. So do I have a motion to approve the Sunset Review Report?
So moved.
Mansdorf, second.
All right. Is there any discussion or public comment? All right. So we have the motion and right. Aye.
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 Okay. So we're going to go into closed session.
And I think there's a discussion before going into closed
Okay,
session
go right
because the evaluation forms weren't included in the materials, which is probably an oversight by me with some other direction that I received. However, I think the discussion might be to do this evaluation in March, and I'll include the materials.
Yes, that is a good idea. So do we do that in closed session or do we do this here?
We don't need to enter closed session.
Okay, great. All right. So we are going to do an evaluance performance of the executive officer, but we're going to table that until March. Okay? All right. So I think now we can go on to future agenda items. Do I hear anybody have any future agenda items that we would like to move forward with?
I think there was some question about board certifying programs
Thank
and
you.
evaluating the different programs and why CPMA approves two and not the other.
Right.
So if we can check into that.
So I have a question for you historians here. The California Podiatric Medical Association, CPMA, approves, and this is recognizes two boards in the state of California for you to advertise that you're a member of. One is the American Board of Podiatric Surgery, which is now the American Board of Foot and Ankle Surgeons, which yes, and then the other one is the American Board of Podiatric Orthopedic and Primary Podiatric Medicine, which is now the American Board of Podiatric Medicine. Now, we on our website have a third board that we say you can indicating certification from a non-approved specialty that you can advertise that you're a member of, and that you're board certified, and that's the American Board of Multiple Specialties in Podiatry. It's the ABMSP. My question is do you remember when this was added to be one that's approved for advertising
the
purposes?
date,
Oh,
but I do know this had to do with the expert consultant discussion and finding qualified individuals, and then the board made the recommendation to add additional board certifications, and so the third one was added to the list of requirements. I could go back historically and find that information. The date, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. It was a board decision to add.
So here's my, not problem, but I would like to bring this up. I don't know that, I mean, I would rather maybe stay in line with what CPMA is saying is okay, number one. That's one thing I have. The second thing is when you go to the website, like our website, it would be nice if we can change these boards to reflect the real names of these boards now.
Oh, they're not updated?
No, they're not updated. So can we make a note of that? Okay. And then the third thing is this. The click-throughs don't work for this last board. So I had to do a little digging to get to it. The only thing I could find that was the big distinguishing factor to it was that the American Board of Foot and Ankle Surgeons and the American Board of Podiatric Medicine, which is, the two that the CPMA say yes to, you have a 10-year window to become board certified after graduating in residencies, okay? The American Board of Multiple Specialties in Podiatry have a category of certification within that certification that it'd be okay if you were out in practice more than 10 years. So I don't know if that was the issue. Because, if you don't get board certified within 10 years on one of these boards, you can't get board certified except through this board.
I think the main issue was we were trying to recruit additional individuals, and the point was made up that there are other certifications that might be could accept.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know much about this board, and I don't know why CPMA just doesn't list it either. And once again, the click-through for that one doesn't work. You have to actually go and try to find the board.
I don't know the answer to this, but it may circle back to the question about what boards does the APMA recognize? Because I would think that California is probably
going on that.
But I could not speak from the top of my head what APMA recognizes, but that might be an issue of where the CPMA alignment comes from, possibly.
Okay. So, okay.
May I suggest that we discuss this in March because it's not on the agenda?
Thank you.
Well, it's a future agenda item.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so in the future, we're going to discuss this, so we need to find out what CPMA does.
Okay.
That would be one thing. Find out what APMA does. That'd be another thing. And then I would like the podiatrists on this board particularly to do a little research on their own, if they can enlighten me any more than I've tried to figure out the enlightenment. Okay? Is that all right?
Would it be helpful to invite CPMA for a discussion?
It's always helpful to have them here.
Okay.
That'd be great. So that would be a good thing to do. Have them here in March. Okay.
Or we could just request something in writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I like when they come, though.
And not to disregard that.
I think they should come. Anyways, yes. All right, great. That's the one future agenda item is the board. Oh, let me tell you, we can discuss in March why it even came up. Okay, and here's the second thing, is the website. Can we talk about the website in the future about, who's in charge of it? How quickly can you
We
get...
could basically just make the suggestion that you would like the website changed or a discussion of the website for future agenda.
Okay.
I know you're chomping at the bit.
No, I just don't know the logistics of changing it. Is it you guys, or do you have to ask somebody to change it? You have to ask somebody to change it, right? Yeah, that's tough. Okay, I get it. But I thought that was the
It will be
case.
on the agenda.
Thank you. All right. Do we have anything else that needs to be on the agenda?
No, but I have a comment. So I just want to recognize Tara Welch for kind of getting the AB 2138 regs started with you guys and doing such a great job. Because I realized, I'm like, when I said team of one, I'm like, no, wait, that's not true. You don't want to, we can't forget Tara. She is awesome, and she really, got the material started, and she did such a fantastic job. I just want to make sure that, while I appreciate the recognition, don't forget Tara because she's awesome.
Thank you. So anything else?
Be looking for an email.
Got it. Okay. Well, there's some suspense. Never know what you're going to find in Sacramento when you drive here. Oh, my God.
It's not that interesting.
Okay,
and
fine.
fun. There's no
All right.
major news.
Thank God. All right. So if we don't have any other future agenda items, then I'm going to adjourn this meeting. So the meeting is officially adjourned. Oh, wait,
Motion
hold on.
to adjourn,
Motion
Mansdorf.
to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a motion?
Okay, who was the motion? Neil?
Mansdorf.
Mansdorf.
Okay, and do I have a,
Dr. Zeff, second.
Yes.
okay.
So we need a
I
motion.
move we accept the executive reports.
I second the motion. Okay, so all in favor?
Okay, so Dr. Manzi,
Aye.
Ms. Cadenas,
Aye.
Dr. Mansdorf,
Aye.
Dr. McAloon,
Aye.
and Dr. Zapp.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, and before I adjourn, I want to thank our staff once again. You guys,
Thank you.
amazing amount of job for a very small office. Thank you so much. The profession really appreciates it. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Not
Mansdorf.
adjourn, to go to closed
To
session.
go to no, we're not doing closed.
We're not doing
We're not
closed.
doing it?
closed session
Okay.
now.
I move we adjourn.
Okay. Do I have a Okay, so
We already have a motion from Dr.
There was
Mansdorf.
yes, there was a motion from Dr. Mansdorf and a second by Dr. Zaff on the adjournment.
Great. Motion to adjourn. I don't have my gavel. That's why this is not going well. Yes, aye.
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 Thank you.